Alright, I am back with another video, and no, I don't know why Lae'zel has this weird bit of hair growing out of her face. We're just going to turn her slightly this way so it doesn't look completely unnatural, and we're going to pretend it doesn't exist. So, anyways, today we have another Lae'zel build. This wasn't originally meant to be a Lae'zel build, but this video does have a little bit of backstory to it. So, recently in my Discord, the conversation came up again about Valour Bard and its weird place in the game, where a lot of people seem to think it's not as good as being a martial character as Swords Bard, and it's not as good as a spellcaster as Law Bard. It does have some support utility, but it's a very, let's just say, not very big difference compared to normal bardic inspiration, so a lot of people are struggling to find its place in the game, where even Glamour Bard, to an extent, has a bit more going on for it. And I've talked about Valour Bard on the channel before, in ways that I might give it a little bit of a boost to make it feel more distinct. In my what things I would change about these classes video from a way long time ago, I think it was like over a year ago now, I talked about Valour Bard, saying that I think in order to kind of give it a better bridge between being a spellcaster and a martial character, I decided that it would be a good idea to give Valour Bard an extended spell list. Spells that are typically cast through your sword. So kind of like the Paladin Smite spells in the original video, I surmised that it should get Thunderous Smite and Wrathful Smite because Thunder and Psychic are both, damage types that are related to Bard, etc. So, and even maybe more support spells like Crusader's Mantle and such like that. But then that got me thinking, what would a Valour Bard that actually has those additions added to the build look like? Now, I've since thought of more ways to kind of fix Valour Bard, and I actually will go into a more detailed, dedicated video on that. For the record, fix is in quotations. It's not something that needs to be fixed, it just could use a little bump to make it more distinct. So I might do a dedicated video on that, but this might be how I kind of use the build making that we have available to us to give Valour Bard a slightly more unique identity amongst its other counterparts. As such, I want to focus really on the support aspect. Valour Bard is known for being able to use an augmented bardic inspiration to give allies extra damage and points to their armor class. So we're going to be picking up some spells and features that also are about supporting allies, as well as grabbing the aforementioned smite spells, like I said, in order to be able to give us some martial spell casting that's going to feel potent. And when I started looking about how this was going to be kind of a psychic thunder build, I thought about making this build a Githyanki as well, and such we've brought Lae'zel along. And in this specific version of Lae'zel, this is kind of another what if build, I like to think that this is many years into the future after she sided with Orpheus and now is his kind of most trusted war general in the fight against Vlaakith and eventually the Mind Flayers as well. So she's a bit older here, she's a bit more grizzled, and that's kind of her reason to have these support-based abilities. She's all about commanding her troops and making sure that nobody goes down in combat, hence the Valour Bard buffs, as well as being able to manipulate psychic stuff, which again, by siding with Orpheus, she would definitely know how to better control the Githyanki psionic abilities, and adding the thunder stuff in as well feels pretty fun. So yes, this is a Valour Bard build based on a different version of Lae'zel in order to see, can we actually make Valour Bard feel distinct and maybe even better in some ways than Law or Swords? So let's find out by getting straight into the build. We're going to be kicking things off as a Paladin. I've decided that another thing I would change about kind of Valour Bard would be to actually give the Bard heavy armor proficiency. Now, I know this may seem like a bit of a stretch because I think, again, for most people, it would be a case of just, well, a one-level Dipper Fighter or Paladin usually would solve that problem anyway, so why would we need to ever really give heavy armor to the Valour Bard? Well, for people who don't want a multi-class, it would be nice to actually have a bit more martial capability from Valour Bard by giving them access to heavy armor. So that would be my personal recommendation. That way you would have access to all weapons and armor without needing to multiclass, which actually feels pretty good. In addition to the bardic inspiration, you now feel like you have more of a kind of a place in combat without needing to invest too much in dexterity, meaning that strength-based bards are now way more viable, which is something that doesn't often come up. That would also help give Valour Bard a unique bit of identity, which is why I don't mind starting with Paladin today to get that heavy armor proficiency. So by starting off as Paladin, we're going to gain access to all the proficiencies that we're going to need for this build. Simple and martial weapons, all armor, and shields. We're not needing to use shields today as we are going to be using a greatsword, but overall, I feel like this works pretty well. I've got to keep remembering not to turn Lae'zel too much because it gets weird. We're also going to gain access to Lay on Hands and Divine Sense. Unfortunately, we're not going to get too much out of Lay on Hands on this build, because we're not really going to be going too high into Paladin here. We only want the 2 Paladin spells that we want for this build, that being the Smite spells, so we're not going to be going too high, so Lay on Hands unfortunately isn't going to be a big deal, but Divine Sense is always nice. Moving on to our subclass, you've got a lot of options to choose from, and honestly, we're mainly just here for the base class of Paladin, rather than any kind of specific subclass, so honestly, to pick your favourite, even Oathbreaker works. I did go for Oath of the Crown though, and I will explain why, but I can justify the others as well. Oath of the Crown allows you to give yourself or an ally an additional bonus to their attack rolls equal to the target's proficiency bonus. So basically, I can target an ally, say, hey, your proficiency bonus is now added to your attack rolls. That feels very Bardic Inspiration-like, so I kind of felt like that kind of fits the idea of, again, kind of augmenting our allies' abilities through support-based skills. And again, playing with Oath of the Crown, it's kind of the new thing. If you wanted to go for more levels in Oath of the Crown, you get the thing that like draws enemy attacks towards you and such like that, and can even heal with a shout, which again, maybe is something that Valour Bard could lean into in the future, but again, that's taking the concept a bit too far. Again, any of these subclasses really work, so Righteous Clarity is a good option. Oath of Vengeance to make it so your attacks deal a little bit of extra damage can also work. Devotion to be able to do retaliatory radiant damage for yourself or an ally, very, very good. Also kind of fits the same vibe as Oath of the Crown. And Oath of the Ancients can give a little bit more healing, but again, with the lower levels of Paladin, probably not worth it. And Oathbreaker can give you advantage on attack rolls and a bit of extra necrotic damage, so really, it's up to you. I like Oath of the Crown the most here, because it's new, but also because we do get this extra ability that feels like it falls in line with Valour Bard, so it's up to you, but I obviously Oath of Devotion or Vengeance obviously work really well too. Moving on to our ability scores, they've been messed up because of course they have. Thanks game. This is what you're looking at. Strength is at 16 as it is going to be our main attacking modifier, and it's been a while since I've done a strength build, so this is kind of nice. Dexterity is at 10, we're wearing heavy armor, so we don't need super high dexterity. Constitution is at 14, but this will be bumped up to a 16 by the end of the build. Intelligence is at 8, we don't need it. Wisdom is at 10, we don't explicitly need it here, but it's nice to have just a little bit for those saving throws. And Charisma is at 16 because it is our main spellcasting modifier. For our skill proficiencies, Lae'zel is a soldier, meaning that she's going to come with athletics and intimidation. But I've decided to grab insight and persuasion for our paladin proficiencies here. Now, obviously, if you started as a bard, you would get more proficiencies, which is always good to have. But again, we don't get that heavy armor if we multiclass, and I wanted to show off what the potential of a heavy armor bard can do here. So I really wanted to prioritize that first to kind of show that, hey, Valour Bard could do with heavy armor. So this is going to be our starting stats. That is level 1. Now, I don't normally show this bit of the video, but look, she's completely normal outside of the character creation screen. I don't know what's going on today, the game's just being a bit buggy. At level 2 of Paladin, we're going to gain access to Divine Smite, which I did not use once in my testing. Obviously, any build that takes 2 dips of Paladin with full spellcaster levels is going to be a powerful build, so I decided to just deliberately not use Divine Smite during combat, and just left it completely. This allowed me to kind of experiment with the idea that I'm trying to go for here a bit more, a Psychic Thunder Valour Bard. And honestly, you don't need Divine Smite. Thunderous Smite and Wrathful Smite do really, really well on their own, and I'd actually much rather be spending my resources on that because they're just more fun to use in this sense. But of course, if you're playing this build normally for yourself, then Divine Smite is absolutely amazing. You're going to be able to do massive amounts of damage with it with up to level 4 spell slots, so of course feel free to use it as you would. But otherwise, I actually avoided using it, and this build was still incredibly stupid powerful, so you don't really need to worry about it. We also do get to choose a fighting style at this point, and really, I've gone for a greatsword build here, but honestly, you can use any type of weapon you like, so really, this is down to personal preference. Want to go sword and board? Protection or dueling is amazing. Want more defense? Well, defense works. And obviously, we'll be going with great weapon fighting today because we are two-handing a weapon, but any weapon that uses your strength, which can be pretty much any of them except for ranged weapons, will work with this build. So pick your favorite. We're just kind of doing a very specific example today because I like the idea of making a Githyanki for this build. Moving on to our spell selection, obviously we need to talk about the 2 most important spells, the ones I actually suggested. The first being Thunderous Smite, allowing us to deal an additional 2d6 thunder damage that can be upcasted to deal a bit more, pushing the target away and knocking them prone. Like all Smite spells, this does take your action, your bonus action, which can suck a little bit, but we're honestly not too bonus action heavy on this build, so this is perfectly fine. Moving on as well, we can pick up Wrathful Smite, allowing us to deal an additional 1d6 of psychic damage, which can also be scaled up. This one does does require concentration because it maintains a frightening effect on the target if it lands and they fail a wisdom save, meaning that they'll have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls and be unable to move. So this can be great for locking things down. So Thunderous Smite if you want to push them away and deal some more damage, and Raffle Smite if you want to lock them in place and deal psychic damage, which is not often resisted. So overall, again, I feel like if Valour Bard got access to these spells, which both fit the theme of the subclass, at least in my opinion, they would have a lot more to work with. There's also some other spells you can pick up that I would recommend get added to the subclass later on that I'll talk about as we pick them up, but otherwise I feel like this is a pretty good starting point. As for the rest of our spells here, you know the drill. Heroism, Compelled Duel, Command, and Divine Favor all work perfectly here. Really, it's up to you what you want to pick here. I kind of like this spell spread. I think it works the best for the concept that we're going for. Heroism feels very on theme because it makes other targets immune to being frightened, and again, you can cast this on yourself or your allies, or even multiple if you upcast the spell. It also gives temporary hit points, so this feels like a very good spell, fuck. For someone who is meant to be a commanding leader, so it feels like it works. Compelled Duel compels someone to fight only you, since we're kind of playing a bit of a tank role here, it also makes sense. And Command, of course, is Command. You know what this does, I don't need to explain why it makes sense for this build. Now, like I said before, you could get a Paladin level 3, would fill up some spell slots for you, as we get Command and Compelled Duel automatically from the list. You also get things like Champion's Challenge and Turn the Tide if you're playing, for the crown, so honestly, this can work out pretty well. But overall, I want to just stick with what I'm going for here, and now we're going to dip into Bard. Dip, he says, as if the rest of the build isn't entirely Bard. So, with Valour Bard now, we're going to gain access to a few things, namely, a couple of cantrips. Obviously, you know what we're here to do. Vicious Mockery, and Friends is good here, but I actually like Mage Hand more for the Githyanki specific build, because we get Mage Hand naturally as a Githyanki, but it's only once per long rest. This lets you do it a bit more, so it feels in line with the theme of the build. You also get Vicious Mockery, because of course you do. It's kind of an important part of being a bard, to be able to insult people. Speaking of insulting people, we've got a bunch of spells to help us get a leg up in combat. First up, obviously, I like Dissonant Whispers here. It's another psychic damage spell. Makes sense. Keeping on the thunder and psychic theme though, Thunder Wave also helps us out, dealing 2d8 thunder damage and pushing the targets away upon a failed con save. As well as they will take half damage even if they save, so that's always nice. For your other spells, again, we've kind of already picked up everything that I immediately want here. I like a little bit of Healing Word just to be able to give us a little bit of a top up if we need it, thus that being us or our allies. And for your final spell, again, for role-playing, Speak of Animals is always good. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is very effective, so is Sleep. So really, it's a pick your favorite situation. I'll just go with Speak of Animals. For your starting instrument, pick whatever you like, it doesn't really matter. I went with a flute, don't know why. I think it just works. And we also do get another skill proficiency here. It's up to you kind of what you want to pick up. We kind of have everything that I necessarily want for a build like this. So Deception for the typical bard stuff can be good, or Performance. Really, it's up to you. At Bard level 2, we get Jack of all trades, half of our proficiency bonus added to all skills that we're not proficient in. Pretty nice. We're also going to gain access to Song of Rest for a third short rest, which is always good to have. Moving on to our spell selection, we're going to gain one extra spell, and again, it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. I kind of like everything that we already have. We can pick up Longstrider, we are a martial character, this just gives us some more movement speed. Moving on to Bard level 3, this is where we obviously get to start talking about the class itself, College of Valour Bard. Now, obviously, this is going to give us the improved combat inspiration. Now we can add that 1d6 bardic inspiration bonus that scales up with our level to weapon damage or armor class in addition to the normal stuff. This is an amazing feature, wouldn't change this at all. It just adds that little bit of flavor, and it kind of does give us that battlefield commander feel. Adding that to damage is always really nice, but it feels a bit underwhelming in a game where we can add damage to our weapons in so many different ways. In fact, weapons just having innate damage buffs is pretty damn common, but the fact that this can be up to an extra 1d10 of damage by the time this build is done honestly makes sense. Same for armor class. A potential 10 to someone's armor class can be pretty good. Again, it's just getting lucky on those dice rolls. And by the time this build is done, we're going to have a ton of bardic inspiration to give out, so use this pretty freely because they come back on a short rest, one of our 3. So really, this should be being tossed out every second you get the chance because it just makes sense. And again, if we're going with this proposed fix, then this would also be where Valour Bard would get Wrathful and Thunderous Smite, kind of similar to how clerics get their extra domain spells at the certain levels where you unlock new spell tiers. This is kind of where that would happen. But again, I'll explain the extra spells that I would give as we kind of grab them later in the build. Speaking of spells, we get to choose another one at this point, and of course I immediately want to go with Shatter to get us another big Thunder spell. We also do get to choose some more ability score expertise here. Ability score skill proficiency. I've made that mistake a lot lately. First up, we get to choose 2 expertise here. Deception and Persuasion are pretty damn good, but I like Intimidation more specifically for Lae'zel, so we'll go with that. Right, that's level 5. At Bard total level 4, we're going to gain access to our first feat of the build. A bit late, but it's fine. We're going to gain access to another cantrip at this point. We can grab Friends, as well as another spell to choose from level 2 or below. Honestly, there's a lot of options here, kind of pick whatever you like, but of course, Psychic build, Martial build, makes sense to grab Hold Person to lock someone down in place and guarantee some critical hits, which again, with a Paladin dip, feels pretty good. But imagine you were hitting with one of Valour Bard's Smite spells on a Hold Person, mainly Thunderous Smite, because Wrathful Smite would break your concentration on Hold Person, but Thunderous Smite could do some pretty goddamn big damage, so I would recommend combining the 2. Moving on to our first feat of the build, really it's entirely up to you what you want to grab here, although you are going to have to make a choice here. Strength or Charisma is what you're going to be boosting up here, and of course there's reasons to prioritize both, which is where this specific build could feel a little bit tricky. Hexblade dip. Anyways, so it's entirely up to you kind of which way you want to go about this. I think I really do want our weapon attacks to be landing at this point, and we do have ways of boosting our spell save DC with this build, so let's go with Strength for now. At Bard level 5, we're going to get Font of Inspiration, meaning our Bardic Inspiration now comes back on a short rest as well as a long rest, meaning that we now have way more of those Bardic Inspiration die to give out. Speaking of as well, they become a D8, which means those buffs that we can grant through Combat Inspiration are about to get a lot tougher. I would say at this point we're also going to have access to level 3 spells, and for what I would add to Valour Bard at this point, it's kind of hard to say, but maybe some more of the Smite spells from Paladin could feel pretty nice, like Branding Smite, maybe Elemental Weapon could also feel pretty good. Like anything that kind of is based around weapon casting could feel really, really nice here. Otherwise though, for the level 3 spells that we have access to, we do have access to some pretty interesting ones. The typical Bard selection of course, but obviously Glyph of Warding I've always really liked. I like the idea of setting a trap and having our enemies walk into it. This can do a bunch of different effects like putting targets to sleep or dealing a big dollop of thunder damage, so it covers all our bases for the theme that we're going for. At Bard level 6, total level 8, so again a bit late, but it's still fine. We're going to gain access to extra attack. As far as what Valour Bard is capable of, I wouldn't change this. Getting extra attack is always nice, but if I really wanted to go on the extreme side of fixing things, I would apply here what D&D 2024 did, and that is give Valour Bard the cantrip extra attack, where you can replace one of your 2 attacks as an action with a cantrip to be able to cast Vicious Mockeries left, right, and center. I was really hoping that the patch 8 Blade Singer was going to have that, because Blade Singer was the first subclass to have that cantrip extra attack, but unfortunately we didn't get that in this game with patch 8, so I wouldn't expect Valour Bard to be updated with it here, but who knows, modders may change that. Moving on to spells, we do get to choose another level 3 spell at this point, and honestly I think gaining a pretty decent control spell here for managing groups would be great. So your choices are Fear or Hypnotic Pattern, or even Plant Growth if you're feeling kind of zesty. It's really up to you here. I would say pick one of those 2, but I also like grabbing Enhanced Ability for the flavor of being able to support allies out of combat, giving them advantage on ability checks with a chosen ability. And you know what? I did actually take that when I initially made this build, so I would recommend it here. I just feel like it fits the vibe. Imagine you give someone a Bardic Inspiration and Enhance Ability. They're just not going to fail that check that you've just set them to do, so, you know, I feel like it works. At Bard level 7, we're going to gain access to level 4 spells, and at this point, again, there are a few spells that I would like to pick from for this build, but again, we can talk about those in the equipment section because we do get some of them there. As for now, I feel like more general support options are pretty damn good. Since Githyanki get Misty Step by default, let's grab Dimension Door as an upgraded version that can also bring an ally with us, because again, that just makes sense. At Bard level 8, we're going to get another level 4 spell, and I do like the idea of grabbing Freedom of Movement as well for another great support option, or something that we can use to buff ourselves, making us immune to being stunned, difficult terrain can't slow us down, and we cannot be paralyzed or restrained magically. And again, this is a non-concentration buff that lasts until your next long rest, and since we're a martial fighter, we can make really good use of that. We also do get to take another ability score improvement at this point, and as much as I would love to take the lucky feat here to give us even more roll manipulation, it is a bit better to just grab a bump to our charisma here. At Bard level 9, we gain access to level 5 spells, and at this point, we do kind of have everything that I would have wanted to grab at this point. So I would actually just suggest getting a big, useful support spell in the form of Mass Cure Wounds, which just is a powerful option overall anyway, and it's just a big dollop of healing that again makes you feel like you are a battlefield commander supporting and leading your troops, giving them a bit of extra HP to go back into the fight. And finally, at Bard level 10, we're going to get our maxed out Bardic Inspiration. It's now a 1d10, potentially adding that number to a damage or armor class roll, in addition to everything else normally. So this is very, very nice to have. We're going to gain access to another cantrip, but we kind of have everything already, so minor illusion. We also have access to another level 5 spell, and since we grabbed Hold Person earlier, no reason not to grab Hold Monster. But also, we gain access to magical secrets here, and this is where I get to point out another one of the spells that I would have given to a potential Valour Bard, and that is Banishing Smite. Imagine getting the access to this when you gain access to level 5 spells. It makes sense. It's another Smite spell, it deals force damage, and can possibly banish a target. Valour Bard getting this by default without having to dip into magical secrets for it would be amazing, but there's a few other options that I love for Valour Bard as well, which we can now talk about. Or Warden of Vitality, being able to heal allies every bonus action for a non-concentration option, is really, really awesome, and I think could actually work on the theme of Valour Bard. As well as getting access to things like Crusader's Mantle, being able to buff you and all of your allies' weapon attacks with an additional 1d4 of damage. We'll be getting this in a bit anyway, but I just wanted to point it out here, as it is an option that I think could fit Valour Bard really well, like a Call to Arms, giving everyone extra radiant damage, which I think could be very, very fun. As well as moving down the list a little bit, you can grab things like Spirit Guardians as well. There's so many different ways I think that Valour Bard could be slightly tuned to be even stronger. I actually did take Spirit Guardians in my testing, because I can't remember if I've ever taken Spirit Guardians on a Bard before. It just doesn't really happen, and I feel like the idea of us playing this martial Bard that gains access to Spirit Guardians can actually be really fun. I also like Spiritual Weapon here, Guiding Bolt. You can even get Thunderous Smite here as well, which I think is kind of neat. So overall, pick your favorites here, but I really do like these two options for this build specifically. Moving on to our ability scores, we get 2 more expertise. I like taking expertise in athletics just for the sake of flavor, and we'll also grab deception, so we have really good charisma skills. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty goddamn solid Valour Bard. Yes, we're not getting the extra magical secrets that a Law Bard gets, but we are going to be getting a lot of different spells from our equipment to help compensate for that. Spells that will help fit the build. Our 2-level dip into Paladin, obviously giving us access to heavy armor, feels amazing, as well as these 2 new Smite spells that are really going to feel like it gives Valour Bard a distinct martial fighter caster identity. We're also getting all access to all these other abilities as well, being able to make good use of Thunder and psychic damage across the build of things like Shatter, Thunderwave, Vicious Mockery, Dissonant Whispers, and even gaining access to some powerful control spells, Banishing Smite for big damage and control, Hold Monster in Person, Dimension Door for getting around, Spirit Guardians for even more passive damage as we run around hitting things with our big Thunderous Smite. We've got access to so many decent things here, even big heals, which is always nice to have. So overall, and again, for combat inspiration being the most unique point here, I feel like those 2 level dips into Paladin really do amplify the kind of Valour Bard playstyle. You get to play as this big, tanky, protective fighter but is also able to use bardic abilities to really be able to maneuver around. If Valour Bards were able to get these extra spells added to their spell list, it would really help bridge the gap between Martial and Spellcaster and feel like you can still play a powerful support character. Overall, I feel like there's just many ways that this can be done, and again, I can do a more in-depth how to fix, in quotations, Valour Bard video if people are interested, so let me know if you are. But let's talk about the equipment, because there's actually a decent chunk to talk about. Now, for this build, any strength-based weapon is going to work. You don't have to play as a Githyanki to get this specific playstyle. I just thought that this playstyle was complemented by being a Githyanki, so that's what I went for today. But otherwise, if you want to go for something else, feel free to pick up whatever. Dragonborn with the Drakethroat Glaive could be really fun with that extra thunder damage. You could play as John Fighterson, you know, the human with a sword and shield. It could also really work well. Honestly, pick your favorites here, but of course, I want to talk about Githyanki today. And that means if we're playing a Githyanki who's focused on psychic stuff, then we gotta go with the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. This deals an additional 1d6 psychic damage when wielded by a Githyanki, and will give us advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, resistance to psychic damage, and charmed immunity, while also being a +3 greatsword. It also comes with a unique attack called Soul Breaker that deals extra psychic damage and possibly stuns the target on a con save. Overall, it is the best Githyanki weapon in the game. You can get a minor version of it earlier in the game called the Soulbreaker Greatsword, which deals a little bit of extra psychic damage and gives you a bonus to initiative rolls, as well as giving you that additional Soulbreaker attack. This can be obtained in Act 1 and this can be obtained in Act 3. I'm not sure if the exploit to get the Silver Sword in Act 1 still works, but it might do, if that's the case, you can do that if you desire. But again, any strength-based weapon will work with this build, so honestly, go nuts, go sword and shield if you want. The world is your oyster. It doesn't have to be a Githyanki specific thing. Moving on to our headpiece, you've got a lot of options here, but I ended up going with the Bone Spike Helm in the early game. It's meant to work with barbarians, giving you a bit of psychic damage when you rage, but honestly, we don't really need that here. What we're really here for is the +2 to intimidation, which obviously feels nice with our build, as well as menacing attack, the ability to add psychic damage to our attacks without needing to use our concentration to do so. It would only ever do the once basic 1d6, but we can use this once per turn, and it basically acts as a Diet Wrathful Smite for us, which feels very good in practice. It even does a little bit of extra slashing damage as well, so if you want to get off that psychic damage on an attack without spending your concentration, you can. If you want to put some points into other stats without needing to worry about your charisma as much, we can grab some arcane acuity items. Either the Hat of Storm Scion's power to gain arcane acuity whenever we deal thunder damage. For those of you that don't know, arcane acuity means that for each stack of it, you have a +1 bonus to attack rolls and difficulty class saves with your spells, which is great. Otherwise, you can also get it from the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, which does it on weapon attacks. So this can work with our thunder spells and thunder attacks. If you play as an elf, you could get Booming Blade and really make this stupid. Or you can do it with all of our weapon attacks using the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. In the very early game, though, the Cap of Curing is a fun option, allowing you to do a little bit of healing whenever you use your Bardic Inspiration on somebody, which feels very in line with a Valour Bard to me. There's also the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, allowing you to, whenever you inflict a condition, which we can do very consistently here, you can gain Arcane Synergy, which adds additional damage to your weapon attacks based on your spellcasting ability modifier. We also have the Gibbous of the Worshipful Servant, which will give you advantage on concentration saving throws and momentum equal to your charisma modifier, which boosts your movement speed. And again, that advantage on concentration saving throws feels very good with our big control spells. So overall, across your playthrough, all of these are solid options, so feel free to pick your favorite. Moving on to our cloak, we have the Mantle of the Holy Warrior, which is going to give us access to Crusader's Mantle, one of the spells I suggested to be added to Valour Bard as part of an extended spell list. This is a once per short rest version, so we can use this pretty frequently, which again allows us and our allies to each deal an extra 1d4 radiant damage on all of our attacks. Imagine giving this access to our fighter in the party who's got 3 attacks, able to do an additional 3d4 on all of those attacks of radiant damage, which is not often resisted. I mean, an extra 3d4 doesn't sound like a lot, but when your whole party's doing extra attack 2d4 of radiant damage per turn, that stacks up pretty quickly. So, and again, it feels like a fun and flavorful ability that fits Valour Bard. Moving on to our armor choice, I've gone with the Dwarven Splint Mail today, allowing you to gain a +2 to your constitution. The rest of it we don't really care about. This just helps round out the build with a bit more HP, as well as better concentration saving throws overall, and it rounds us out to a nice even 20 when all is said and done with our armor class. So overall, it's a very, very solid pick here. Moving on to our gloves, you've got two choices here. I've gone for the Wondrous Gloves to increase our armor class by 1, again, rounding it out to a 20, and giving us an extra usage of Bardic Inspiration, so we're able to lean more into the Valour Bard aspect, giving us 6 Bardic Inspiration per short rest, meaning that you just never have to really not use Bardic Inspiration. You're always going to have access to it. We also have access to the Gloves of Belligerent Skies here, allowing us to, whenever we deal thunder, lightning, or radiant damage, we can inflict Reverberation. We will have other ways of inflicting Reverberation on this build that don't require the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, so you can actually work this in without needing to, so you can kind of keep the Wondrous Gloves and still gain Reverberation, which I will discuss in a bit. So with that, you can use the Boots of Stormy Clamour, which allows you to, whenever you inflict a condition upon a hostile creature, they also receive 2 turns of Reverberation. So things like Wrathful Smite, that can work, Dissonant Whispers, Vicious Mockery, all of that can work to trigger Reverberation, meaning that we can now combine that kind of gaining like psychic buffs through our like psychic debuffs through our psychic spells stacked with a thunder debuff, which feels pretty damn good in practice. Otherwise though, if you're not too into that, and you're playing this Githyanki specific build, you can play the Boots of Psionic Movement later on, which will give you the ability to cast Fly on yourself once per long rest as a bonus action, non-concentration, and deal an extra bit of psychic damage with your melee weapon attacks after flying, which is pretty damn nice. Moving on to our accessories, we have the Amulet of Misty Step. Again, this is because we're a Githyanki, and this just lets us teleport around once per short rest, so it just gives us a bit more to our racial ability. Moving on to our rings. First up, we have the Ring of Mental Inhibition. Whenever someone fails a saving throw against one of our spells or actions, they gain Mental Fatigue for 2 turns. Mental Fatigue lowers their mental saving throws. It can potentially deal extra psychic damage if you stack up enough stacks. This also counts as a condition for the Boots of Stormy Clamour, so you can build up those Reverberation stacks really goddamn quick. And Reverberation gives them a penalty to their physical saving throws, so you're able to attack their mental and physical saving throws at the same time, dealing thunder and psychic damage, which, again, is pretty goddamn in line with the build. And then finally, the Ring of Spiteful Thunder. If a creature has Reverberation on them and you attack them, they can make a con save and potentially become dazed, meaning that they'll have disadvantage on their wisdom saves, cannot take reactions, and lose a dexterity bonus from their armor class, meaning that you can debilitate them heavily. This is not necessary though. Feel free to swap this out for something else. The Band of the Mystic Scoundrel would be a great late game option for being able to cast some of these spells as a bonus action after making a weapon attack, so feel free. And I've not included a ranged weapon on this build, so feel free to slot whatever you like in there. But yeah, overall, that is the build. For the camp clothing, we are once again using Fear Taylor's mod, allowing us to grab the Githyanki armor and Vlaakith boots, as well as the eye patch, to give us this kind of like almost older Lae'zel look in my opinion, as well as colouring it in the vanilla Harlequin black and white dye for this awesome grayed out with tints of red Githyanki armor look that I absolutely love, and I feel like fits Lae'zel to a T. But yeah, that is the build overall, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with this. As an experiment in how to make Valour Bard feel a bit more distinct, focusing on grabbing support spells as well as leaning into the psychic and thunder damage types which bards are known for, but combining it with martial prowess really does give Valour Bard a slightly more distinct identity. If I was to mod my own custom version into Valour Bard into the game, just off the top of my head without doing a more detailed video on it, I would definitely be adding psychic and thunder spells to the expanded spell list, including the martial casting smite spells, as well as things like banishing smite, like I said, and things like Crusader's Mantle, all about either doing more martial damage with the Bard's iconic damage types ourselves, or being able to buff up our allies with new abilities. Hell, if I really wanted to throw in, and go completely crazy, I'd throw in an extra level 6 ability that allows us to give our, a flavor effect of, our Bardic Inspiration die's damage can be changed to Psychic or thunder based on, like, you know, what you could choose at the time, but I feel like that would be way too hard to code. But I think it could be pretty cool. Maybe that's something for a tabletop video in the future, which I might start doing again. I'm thinking I might try and make D&D videos again, but we will see. But yeah, overall, I feel like this is a fun little way to make Valour Bard feel a bit more distinct. Throw in 2 levels of Paladin, make it a heavy armor strength build, and go ham with your smite spells and your extra bits of, like, you know, thunder and psychic damage and your support aspect. I think it all comes out pretty well in the wash, and I do think it fits a Githyanki perfectly, even if you don't necessarily want to play Lae'zel. And again, with the equipment that we have here, giving us access to all of this extra stuff, the powerful debuffs, and the many options you have for your headgear, depending on your playstyle, I think it can really work out. And again, if you decide to go the arcane acuity route, you could throw that extra feat that we used on charisma into a different feat, like the lucky feat, which could help you manipulate dice rolls even more, or even something else like Warcaster for advantage on those concepts. Really, it's up to you. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me today. I hope you all found this, like, kind of half build, half thought experiment a bit interesting, and if you would like me to go more detail in an actual, like, kind of extended video, let me know, because that might be a project I can work on in the future. But yeah, at this point, kind of expect to see some more kind of experimental content from me, trying out some new things now that BG3 has finished its updates. I'm going to do kind of a channel update video soon, so keep an eye out for that. But yes, that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.